Hello everyone, here's the best leveling build for AMON utilizing the Cybernetics and Crucible action skill in Borderlands 4. With these, he can freeze enemies instantly with his axe, and there's some pretty cool interactions here. So you can summon in all these different forged swords, hammers, and axes that'll help you out in combat. The nice thing about this build is it's got a variety of different ways to deal with enemies, with both shock and fire damage being a big focus of it. And you also have these little weapons that go around hunting enemies down. So there's a lot of fun with this. You also can get this big hammer here, which will freeze enemies too. So there's a lot of great things with this build. Now for a brief overview of this build. So with this skill tree, it's all about getting these forged drones to come in and deal damage to the enemies. So we can actually spec into two of the skill trees here and choose between two of the different capstones depending on what type of enemy that you're going against, making this a pretty versatile build because we got both frost, fire, and shock depending on what skills and augments that we choose from. So this really specializes in having the tempered ice, tempered lightning, and tempered pyre here to boost up and give you those forged drone abilities. I do have a build on this Scourge skill tree here for the Vengeance, so if you want to check that out, I have that on my channel as well, link it in the description. But with the Cybernetics here, I think one of the best choices at first is to grab the Gathering Storm, which was a kill skill that'll give you an extra 30% damage max your elemental damages. And we're going to be we want to use elemental damage as much as possible, so this is a really good choice. Now, you can also go with the increased gun handling and forward skill cooldown, but I don't think that that's the best choice. Here, we'll give you increased critical hit damage. I think that this one's just the best overall since we're going to be using elemental damages often. Now, we get to choose between two different choices here for our first augment. So this will increase your movement speed for a duration after damaging an enemy with your forge axe, and you can detonate the primed enemies with a melee attack. If you like melee, this is good, but I personally prefer the Endless War. Primed enemies will take increased gun damage for each stack of prime, and if you detonate a primed enemy, a new forge axe is spawned that seeks out a nearby enemy. But what's great about this is it makes the targets take an additional 15% of damage per prime stack. This is pretty good. It increases our overall damage output quite a bit. So this will be the first augment. We do have a better one a little bit later on. Now, as mentioned, the Tempered Pyre is going to be our next choice here. So whenever we use a forge skill, we spawn a axe forge drone that'll attack nearby enemies, dealing incendiary melee damage. Now, anything that boosts up our melee damage actually boosts these up as well. So activating a forge skill with Tempered Pyre is active, fully restores the duration, so these will act even longer. The damage on these isn't very great. It doesn't scale great into Ultimate Vault Hunter, but this is a leveling build, and it's meant to be fun. You still can get by using this skill tree. We'll also, once we get down here, we'll take the Twin Temper. So this spawns an additional Forge Axe that deals Cairo melee damage whenever we have Tempered Pyre. So this is great because it does reduce the duration, but it gives us an extra axe, which is great. I personally like to take the bolt action here. You can go back to some of the other choices here, like increased forge skill damage and detonation damage. This one can be a pretty good choice as well. And this will give you increased gun damage whenever you activate your forge skill. So these can be two good options as well. I personally like bolt action. Whenever you reload your gun, you gain bonus shock damage for a duration. So if you have a gun that reloads often, like the Hot Slugger, you're honestly just going to have shock damage on every single bullet. And that's a pretty good boost to your overall damage. So plus 24%, we're only going to put 4 points into the skill tree here. It's pretty good. Now we get access to, this is actually where it gets interesting because we get a new augment here. And I personally like the Searing Cold. And the reason I like the Searing Cold is because now our frost axes apply freeze on impact. So you can use your frost axe, instantly freeze an enemy. This is extremely powerful. Although the Blade Tempest is also quite nice. This is going to use all three of your axes at once and actually turns them into swords. And you can see that there with him. This does do a pretty good chunk of damage. And if you have enemies that are weak to shock, bring this out because you have both fire and shock. That's going to shred through most enemies. I just personally prefer the Searing Cold, although we're not going to spec into the skill tree at all. Now, again, this is where things get weird because we're at level like 15 or 16 here. The first one we want to grab is a Tempered Lightning. So whenever you activate your skill, you spawn a forged drone that attacks nearby enemies doing shock damage. And once we get this, I'd also recommend actually grabbing the Tempered Ice. So whenever we activate our Ordnance, which are a grenade, we spawn a Hammer Forged drone that does cryo damage. And this is a cooldown of 30 seconds and duration 25. So grab both of these right away because this will give us 2 extra enemies or 2 extra summons that'll go around attacking enemies. Now, I'd actually recommend speccing all the way into this skill tree here first, although it can be nice to go into this one here. If it guess depends. If you need more shock damage, this would be the way to go. Actually, we may as well go here, boosting up the cryo damage all the way. I found between the two of these, it's kind of similar in terms of your effectiveness, but it depends if you want more cryo damage. I think for this point in the game, it's better to go this way. Now we're also going to get the skill tree increasing the damage and duration of our forged drone, so an extra 28% damage, or 35% damage and 25% duration. This is nice because this will now push this duration past the cooldown, so perfect. And on top of this, we now get to grab the Ordained Hammer and our Capstone. So the Capstone here, Snowmaul, is actually pretty good. So press and hold F to throw a twinned forge hammer, dealing crown melee damage to enemies on impact, and ricochets between nearby enemies up to 3 times. And if no additional targets, it deals damage an additional time before destroying itself. Freeze detonation cause, it ricochets an additional time. So this is pretty good because it's going to end up freezing enemies. I do like Storm Surge as well, so you can play between 2 of these once we get to higher levels. And then we also get to grab the Ordained Hammer. So this will now, your hammers will now deal ordnance damage in addition to the other damage types and cause a detonation, damaging enemies, dealing cryo damage in an area. What's crazy about this is adding ordnance damage is pretty powerful because we got abilities to further increase our ordnance damage. Now, once we get to here, I'd actually recommend, there's 2 ways to go about this. So this increases our damage here. You can actually go into this skill tree here, and if you're going to go increasing your ordnance damage, the Scorched Kairos will give you a plus 25% to your ordnance damage. So that's additional damage that's going to actually boost up our abilities here. But we can also just continue on here, getting the Tempered Lightning, which whenever we activate our action skill, we get those lightning, little forge drone that goes around attacking enemies. We'll then go here, which forge drones gain increase attack speed and movement speed. This one isn't super crucial, but we needed to be able to grab this, which allows them to get the critical hit chance. So whenever a forge drone critically hits, they partially restore AMON's action skill cooldown. So you can have a much higher action skill time because this is going to reduce it. And with certain items, we can automatically guarantee a critical hit. So that's why I personally like to have the freezing one and the freezing hammer here. But at this point, you can grab the Storm Surge. So you now have fire, frost, and lightning coverage. And we have 10 points left. I mentioned here going back and taking the increased ordnance damage because that's going to boost up our damage from our forge skills. So that's an extra 25%, and we get a 30% larger magazine. For the final 5 points, we can go with the Destructive Engine here, increasing our forge skill damage and detonation damage. The Bellows here, which will increase our gun damage for a duration. This one is also kind of nice. I like actually to stick into the blue skill tree here. We got the increased ordnance damage and then continue to the Tail of the Comet. So whenever AMON deals ordnance damage, which again, we have many ways to do that, there's a chance to apply a cryo status effect that deals cryo damage over time. And this is actually a pretty good boost to our overall damage. So I like to take that because we're going to be doing ordnance damage quite a bit. So this kind of works all together with an entire skill tree here. But again, you can take some of these other points in the skill tree of the green variety as well. Now, honestly, use your best available gear, but I'm just going to cover the best options here. If you can find the critical hit grenade knife here, this is the best item in the game for this build, or any build really, because for 5 seconds you get automatic critical hits on the enemy, which is huge because this can main some of these weapons here. Critical hits will ricochet to nearby enemies. This will enable that. It becomes pretty powerful. I also like to have anything here for enhancement that increases the ricochets possible by +1, increases gun critical hit damage by 50% too, which is really nice, and then 40% chance to ricochet non-critical hits. This is the best enhancement in the game, and for good reason, because there's some explosive shotguns that can also ricochet and explode the entire area. Now, for shields, I like the Onion Shield, especially on AMON, because he's going to need that extra survivability. He really benefits from getting in close to enemies, I found with all 3 of his skill trees, but this gives you immunity to all damage for 2 seconds. You have 4 segments of your shield that'll block damage. This can work really well with this, which will destroy the entire battlefield and explode you. Without this shield, you die instantly. This will at least protect you. I also like to have this class mod here. For the Glacial Blacksmith, kill skill partially restores all active forge drones durations, and for each active forge drone, AMON deals increased gun damage. This also gives you that 33% forge drone duration and an increase to our overall max shields. So this can actually give us quite a bit of extra survivability, and also the skill point that we get from this are quite nice too. Obviously, this is random generated, but this gives us a big boost to our overall cold damage. This also boosts up our forged drone damage, so +1 there. And then in addition, it also gives us our tempered lightning boost too. So that's pretty nice getting our cold and lightning boost from this. But again, your skill, whatever class mode you can find, this one just works the best because it boosts up our forged drones quite a bit. Now, the best Repkit in the game is to utilize the triple bypass with the amp, which will increase the next shot damage by 200%. And paired with something like the Hot Slugger can do a lot of damage because this can also give you a +90% damage. So the best weapon, obviously, Hot Slugger's great. Kickballer, another really powerful weapon. I also like the Dark Beast here because this can critical hit and also pierce enemies. And then the Stray, it's just a really useful weapon because it automatically aims. So if you just want to run around making sure that you're setting up your forge drones, that's the way to do it. For specializations, this is really important because some of them are super powerful. Now with Caffeine will allow you to regenerate your action skill whenever you use a Repkit by 25%. We have 3 charges with that one, which will boost the damage. So that's 75% of our action skill right there. And then also the Fragmented Payload. So Ordnance have a chance to critically hit enemies. As mentioned, we have a lot of Ordnance damage. And it also gains the Ordnance critical hit damage. So further boosting up our overall damage there. Bare Arms, melee damage now benefits from increases to gun damage, And melee damage is actually kind of funny because that's what our axes do. So this specialization will boost our overall damage by 50% of the increases to gun damage, which we can get a lot of other ones too. And then the full spectrum arsenal ordnance damage now benefits from increases to gun damage as well. Alternatively, you can go with something like the overkill. Whenever you kill an enemy, you get 50% of your initial hit added onto your damage. The tripwire reduce ordnance cooldown. This is only good if you have a ordnance that's really high damage, like the exploding ones, the single fire ones, I should say. And then you could also go with the riddle you this, which will give you increased gun damage. This one's actually pretty nice because it gives you plus 50% damage. You can build up stacks really quickly with certain weapons. So that's my favorite for the specializations. Now putting this all together, any gun that can critically hit and chain to multiple enemies, like the hot slugger there, is going to be good. But we want to be using our action skills. Now the frost is great because you can use this to apply the freeze condition onto an enemy there. So you see we have him frostbit, and then we can throw their axe there. And we have our frost hammer here, which we can also throw, and then throw a grenade. You got all these forge axes, forge hammers, forge swords going away attacking him. I'm not even going to shoot at him here, and you can see they're doing a pretty good job. You got your axes there again, which can freeze. Not every single enemy is going to get frozen there, but you can see there we got quite a bit of damage going from our forge hammers and axes. They're all getting those critical hits off. So while the damage isn't super high, Amon honestly is the weakest Vault Hunter, I would say, after playing through all of these in Ultimate Vault Hunter 5. He's got the lowest damage output, but he's really fun. This is the most enjoyable axe throwing experience since God of War 2018 there. Really fun build. Not the most powerful, but he gets it done. Honestly, I would say the best weapon to utilize would be this one here. This grenade's actually pretty good, the mortar grenade on him as well. Now, the most overpowered combination is to use your grenade there and the kickballer, which you can see insta kills pretty much everything in the game. I think that it works really well in here because it boosts the ordnance damage, but yeah, you can see there, it destroys bosses and enemies alike. Everything in its wake is going to be destroyed, so that would be, honestly, this is the best weapon in the game, the kickballer. Hot Slugger works great too. The Stray Rifle, you don't have to focus on aiming. And then Dark Beast again, very powerful. This is the Amon leveling build. So again, if you're lower level, go for obviously the best available weapons. You're going to utilize his skills here. I'd recommend having a corrosive gun because he can cover frost, he can cover fire. And if you switch it out and use the different skill tree here, going with the augment of the Blade Tempest, instead of using the axes, you can then shoot your swords and you can shoot multiple and you get shock damage too. And the shock damage is actually pretty powerful as well. So yeah, that is the most powerful leveling build for Amon in Borderlands 4. Let me know your thoughts. If you have any questions, feel free to leave in the comments below. I hope you have a great day and we'll catch you all in the next video.